Good morning, everyone. Mayor Chris Jenson here on Monday morning, August 2nd. Kristen Boice, I can't believe it's already August already.
Where did the time go?
Where did the time go? I keep thinking back how long ago we started this conversation, and what seemed like a very blip in the radar novel conversation has turned into a long dialogue around mental health. So I just say that because I appreciate my good friend Kristen Boice, the owner of Pathways to Healing, for giving her time to join us again for another Mental Health Monday edition. So Kristen, welcome.
Thank you for having me, and happy belated birthday.
Thank you. I turned the big 3-7 on Saturday. So I had a great time with the family, spent time outside. I got to go to the pool yesterday. The kids are ready to get one last swim in before the official start of back to school here in Noblesville. That was this morning. I know we have viewers from all over the country who are probably starting at different times. Back here in Indiana, a lot of folks are going back to school here at the beginning of August. So we're going to touch a little bit on that, Kristen, because there's a lot of emotions. I don't know about your household, but I had a fifth grader this morning who was very concerned about his hair. And I had a kindergartner who had already made one dress change before heading out the door at 7 a.m. So we went with the cheetah pants route instead of the dress because we had gym this morning. So we had a lot of things going on, and then two others on their way too. And I applaud all the school systems who are working so hard and getting their plans ready. And there's a lot that goes into that, but there's a lot of emotions that parents and grandparents and guardians and kids feel about that. So, but we'll get into that a little bit later. Before we get into anything, we want to do something that I love to do, which is some square breathing, and I'll let Kristen take us through that exercise.
Thank you so much. Yes, lots of emotions today. So the first thing I invite everybody into is put your feet on the floor. You can do this standing up, sitting down, wherever you are. This is a strategy I recommend using as we're going through this transition with school and back to school. Staff can use it, parents, teachers, kids, everybody. I invite you into doing this deep breathing. So feet on the floor. We're going to inhale for 4 through your nose, hold for 4, and exhale slowly out your mouth for 8, like you're slowly breathing through a straw. So let's do 2 breaths together to practice. So feet on the floor, pressing into those feet, a big deep belly breath inhale. Hold and slow release. Exhale out your mouth. Do one more together, stretching out. Drop those shoulders down on that out breath, really letting go of all the stress of the morning. Maybe it was stressful, hustle, bustle. Maybe you had a lot of emotions come up. This is one of the number one things I teach people is breathing through all of that stress and anxiety. So feet on the floor, pressing into your feet. Big, deep inhale. And release. Almost like you're letting all that air out of the balloon, all that tension that has built up over the morning. You're letting it out of your body so it's not holding into your body throughout the day. So let's do 5 or 6 breaths every hour today to get your nervous system back into alignment as we make this transition.
I think it's a good point, Kristen, because this isn't just an exercise you should do one time throughout the day. This should be something you should do on a regular basis. I always laugh and tell people, if you see me driving down State Road 32, just mainly because of the congestion issue, but because of a lot of things, I do a lot of square breathing as I'm driving home or I'm on my way in the morning. So it's something that if you need to set an alarm on your phone, do that because it's an important reminder. Do it before staff meetings, do it with friends at work, whatever you need to do throughout the day to get yourself centered again. So I love this exercise, and it's something we need to be doing more often. So I'll mention if you're tuning in live here, feel free to leave any questions throughout the morning or say hi. We always love to see who's watching. If we don't get back to you on the show, we'll get some answers over to you later, but this is meant to be interactive. This is for the community here to take a look at this conversation. So we're going to touch on schools here in a little bit, but if you tuned in about 3 weeks ago, we had a little bit of a break this summer, Kristen. We had a really good conversation about 4 communication styles. And it's something that hit home with me. I think I used a lot of personal references in that conversation. Actually went home and Julie Jenson and I dove into that conversation a little bit more. So I thought maybe we could do a quick refresher about those communication styles, maybe some techniques that if we're trying to maybe we identify a little bit stronger on one side and you don't necessarily want to be there, how do we work on some practical applications, if you will, to get us to be the best communicator that we want to be. So if we could start there, that would be helpful.
Okay, let's recap the four. I'm going to do a real quick overview, and I invite you to go back and watch. It's been 3 weeks now, I believe, since our last episode. I don't know if we're calling them episodes, but since our last time together.
Sure.
And there's four in particular. There's one that I work with mainly for people to achieve working towards. So let's go through what that number one is assertive. We want assertive communication. I like to call it compassionately direct. So where we're regulated, we're able to self-soothe, and we can say directly how we feel with an I feel statement. So we have our core emotions. And this is the thing. I wish we could all have these on our forehead or on a shirt. We could go, I feel sad and scared today because we're transitioning to school and I'm afraid someone's not going to sit with my kid at lunch. I mean, wouldn't this be amazing if we could communicate like that with each other? I think we would have deeper, authentic, more vulnerable connection, which is what we're all craving. So direct communication looks like that example I just shared. I say, I feel with a core emotion in there. And because, so I feel sad and scared because I really want this to be a great transition for the kids today and the staff. And I'm worried that it might not be. Something like that would be a direct, clear communication. Passive aggressive would look like I'm not really saying how I feel. I'm kind of burying, I'm suppressing, I'm dancing around. I might be huffing and puffing, slamming things down, not really saying how I feel. And I might make some comment like someone didn't put their dishes in the sink today. That would be kind of an example of a passive aggressive comment rather than I feel exhausted or I feel sad because I have to keep reminding you to put the dishes in the dishwasher. Could you please do that by 5 o'clock today? Put the dishes in the dishwasher. That's more clear. That's more direct. I'm owning how I feel. I'm not projecting how I feel. And passive aggressive is one I see a lot. Then we have aggressive, where we could be name calling. We could be dysregulated. This is one where I see people are high intensity. They're highly activated, and they're going to kind of unload on somebody else, and it's not really their problem. They don't say it in a centered way. They say it in a very intense way. And maybe in a family system, they've grown up where people would yell and scream, and they didn't learn how to self-soothe. They learned how to defend and protect themselves. And so they think anger is the only way to get heard. Then we have submissive. And this is where we don't really say how we feel. We go along with, we people please. We say, what would you like for dinner? I don't care. How do you feel today? I'm fine. It's very please. We do that to protect ourselves, to avoid abandonment and rejection and disconnection. We will abandon ourselves in order to try to do or say what we think someone else wants us to say. And we end up feeling very lonely, sad, depressed, and highly anxious. So we really want to deconstruct the origins of where that type of communication style came into play. We all can do all four of them. So I want to make sure that's clear. Like we're not getting an A+ score here because we all.
So you've made the comments about the dishes before is basically what you're saying.
Yeah.
Even at Kristen Boice's house, she made the passive aggressive.
Well, who? Okay. Somebody left their shoes in the middle of the floor instead of saying, Kate, could you, or Allie or Mark, could you put your shoes in the, locker by 5 o'clock today or whatever? I can go somebody, which is very passive aggressive. So it's owning and taking a look at your own contribution to the communication, not what other people are doing, because that's what we tend to do. I go, oh, 3 fingers. If I point the finger at somebody else, guess what? 3 fingers are pointing back at me. And I need to take a look at how I'm communicating, even today for school. If you're highly anxious, if you're afraid, if you're feeling stressed because you have to get to work, you have to get the kids on time, they're disorganized, and you're losing your marbles, we all been there. Take a deep breath, feet on the floor, recognize you're triggered, recognize how you're communicating, recognize and be aware. That's the first step. If I'm unconsciously, let's say I flip my lid with our little brain model, right? This is a regulated brain. This is a highly triggered and activated brain. What happens is then our kids are doing this. and we're all stressed, and it's a very highly anxious environment. So the first step is for the parent, i.e. me, to take a look at my energy, take a look at my stress, and take responsibility for it by taking my deep breaths. And the girls now go, oh, Mom, you're deep breathing again. Yep, because I'm trying to get myself regulated. I got to calm myself down. I feel anxious. I feel afraid. So I have to take responsibility for that. That's the whole key with communication, because we can spend a lot of time blaming and shaming someone else and not really taking a look at my contribution to the family dynamic or the relationship.
Well, let's pivot on that, because you brought out some great school examples there. And I think that parlays well into, a lot of kids are going back to school across the country. There's still a lot of anxiety, questions. There's debates about what's being worn at schools, what's not being worn at schools. There's also kind of some resurgence of some COVID issues across the country. So there's a lot of questions out there, which is life in general. But then you have your kids that are trying to go back to school to have as much of a normal experience as possible. So as parents transition to that today, if you talk about owning your own communication style, but I don't know about you, but sometimes when I ask my oldest son, CJ, for example, how are you? Fine. How is your day today? Fine. So how do we kind of work with if I'm a parent or a grandparent or a guardian, and I think that I'm a pretty good communicator, but I'm trying to communicate with my kids about how they're feeling about going back to school. Could you maybe give us some tips on how to manage that?
Yeah, the first thing is, if you're highly activated, they're not going to want to open up. So I always notice my energy first. Like, am I coming from what feels like to them interrogation? They're not going to open up. When I soften and I say, there's a lot of emotions whenever there's a transition, I normalize. Sometimes we feel afraid, and I can remember when I went back to school for the first day, that kind of butterfly in my stomach, feeling like, well, who am I going to sit with at lunch? And am I going to have friends in my class? And are people going to like me and accept me? And we're still trying to, go through all of those internal feelings of, am I good enough? Will I belong? Will people accept me for who I am? That is huge for all of our kids right now. Even as parents, we feel like that. Am I going to be liked? Are my kids going to be liked? And we have to first recognize your own emotions. Take a deep breath, soften your voice, look at them with loving eyes, and normalize that it's normal to have different feelings. It's normal to be nervous. It's normal to be afraid. It's normal to be excited. It's normal to have some grief that summer's over and you might feel sad. So there might feel some relief and excitement to go back. There's a whole mixture. It's like a ball of yarn of emotion. And I normalize that repeatedly. So I say it's okay to have all these different feelings. And when we talk like that on a regular basis and they can start naming the emotion, again, we kind of really work on us saying, I feel, sad, I feel scared. We start naming them. We can name it to tame it. So one of the things is when we start normalizing and use this as a language in our family system, then it becomes more normal to name it. It's pretty typical for kids to go, how was school? Fine, right? Like you said, what did you do? Nothing. And you're like, okay, this is going well. Yeah. And I'll say, here's what I say to that. I say, there's a lot of feelings that can come up throughout the day, and I am totally available if you want to talk about or process anything. And then lo and behold, and I'll stop asking questions. And then typically before bedtime, maybe at dinner, they'll say, yeah, I felt really sad because at gym, no one picked me as a partner. And I felt really afraid. I felt sad and I felt stupid. I was so embarrassed. And I go, oh man, now I'm going to mirror back what I heard. So their brain goes, oh, they get me and they understand. So I'll say, oh, you felt really, stupid and you felt embarrassed. I'm going to use their words, and sad because no one picked you for a partner in gym class. Yeah. And I was, now they might be feeling, and I'm like, good. We don't want to rescue them from that. So what I find is parents, if the child starts crying, they go, well, at least you have, somebody at lunch to sit with. And we start trying to make them feel better, and we stunt their processing. And so if they start crying, good, we're letting it out now. We can say, yeah, it's okay to let it out. It makes sense. That's really hard when that happens. Tell me more about it. oh, that to help me kind of paint the picture of what that was like for you. Help me understand what that might have been like for you. These are questions that create a safe environment. When you say it's normal to have all these different kinds of emotions, it's okay. And we don't fix, rescue, or save them out of those feelings. We let them process those emotions. Then they start feeling better. And then they want to talk to us more often. It takes a while and then sometimes they don't. And they'll say, like last night at dinner, I'm going, how are you feeling about school? I don't feel like talking about it. And I said, okay, if you want to talk about it, let me know. I'm totally available. And I stopped because I wanted to know, like, give me like, what's going on for you? And they had the freedom to say, hey, I don't want to talk about it right now. And I say, okay, let me know if you do want to talk. I'm totally available to hear what that's like. So this morning, guess what? They start talking. I feel nervous and excited and a little afraid, and we just start processing, and I just let them talk, and I go, oh, that makes so much sense. That's the first day jitters, that kind of thing.
So even when a kid identifies that they don't want to talk about it, you're saying that's really a win, that they're able to at least identify and communicate how they feel in that moment.
Yes, and saying that's okay. I'm available when you do want to talk. That's a key part of that. So we don't just not bring it up again. I'm waiting though. I'm giving them some space and then let them bring it up, knowing that I'm a safe place to come to when they're available. And so I'm having to manage myself when they're like, yeah, I just don't want to talk about it right now. I'm tired. I'm like, well, let's get it out. Let's talk about it. Let's get on the table. And I have to take a deep breath and go, okay, just when you're ready, I'm available.
And I think that's a good point that parents, especially of probably middle school and high school students, need to realize that, again, unfortunately, parents, we may want to know more than we're able to get at that moment. So be patient and be available. I think that's a great tip to give, especially middle and high school parents, I would imagine. I'm not there yet. My kids usually tell me everything, even down to every last little gross detail of their day. But I know your girls are a little bit older, so you probably have a different dynamic when it comes to that. And I think that's okay, which is good. So let's talk a little bit about relationship opinions on these transitions, because I think you had some great information there on how to talk to our kids, how to let them process these transitions. But oftentimes with all that's going on in life right now, parents, couples may have different opinions on how to handle, do our kids wear masks during the day? Do they not wear masks during the day? That's just one very prevalent, conversation going on right now. But can we talk a little bit about how we enter partnership, have that communication, and then how do we handle that if we disagree, maybe around our kids as well?
Yeah, and these are tough conversations. So I want to acknowledge like that what we're talking about, I'm making it sound easy than maybe it really is. It's really about, first of all, self-regulating. Second of all, recognizing you have two different feelings and emotions that might be going on. One person might have a lot more fear than the other person. One person might not, their fear meter might be at a 0. And let's say the partner's fear meter is at a 10. So we have to go, how afraid are you? Like, what's underneath it? When we can get to the core emotions and not get to the outcome, we're going to be headed in the right direction. So if I can say, I feel scared because I'm afraid of the kids getting sick and I'm just wanting to protect them, now we can go from there rather than the outcome based. Like the actionable stuff, like I want them to wear masks. Okay, well, that's jumping to what we want the outcome to be rather than going to the deeper conversation. And I think that's really important. So that might say, I feel really scared because I lost, Susie to COVID, and that's still such a loss for me. And I'm scared, I'm grieving that, and it's still there. And so I'm still having some fear around that. That's a much deeper conversation. And then I invite the partner to mirror back. And again, it's like holding a mirror up. It's not for the partner, it's for the person to go deeper within themselves. So then the person would say, you're feeling really scared and you're still grieving over the loss of Susie because of COVID. And this is kind of bringing up a lot of feelings of fear and grief for you. And the person will go, yeah, they might start feeling. What happens is we're having deeper conversation and naming it rather than dancing around it and arguing about outcome. Now, you still might disagree. Now we're going to ask our kids, without projecting my fear and my anxiety, we'll say, how are you feeling about not wearing a mask? How are you feeling about wearing a mask? What's coming up for you? Let them process what feelings are coming up for them. It's super important that as a family system, we get in the habit of naming what's really going on. This is what healthy family systems do. These are not easy conversations because a lot of times people don't agree. Sometimes we have to say, okay, let's put a pin in it and come back to it when we might be in a better space to come up with hearing one another and then coming up and brainstorming options and what the best option could be. Because what happens is with couples is they stop hearing the other person and they get mad and they go into defense and they start getting defensive rather than hearing what's really going on underneath what somebody is saying. And I'm seeing that right now. We get into, I'm afraid. And so I get into, this has to be the outcome. And I'm not really hearing other options or other possibilities. And I don't feel heard. So it's really important that we learn, one, to acknowledge our own feelings and share those. Two, to listen to other people's feelings and acknowledge it doesn't mean you have to agree with them. And then we can get into problem solving. What I see people do is they put the cart before the horse. They want to solve the problem without doing any of this deep processing work because we weren't taught this. No one taught us about emotions and how to process them. Then we can get to the solution more easily. It doesn't mean it's easy. It means we have a system in which we're going to talk about feelings first, then talk about problem solving.
Yeah, and I'm really guilty of this. I think I've said on this show many times, I'm a fixer. I want to get it fixed and I want to move on. And we were actually, Julie, Jenson and I were having a conversation this weekend about certain topics. And we actually worked on acknowledging like that may not happen overnight. We need to think about this and talk about it a little bit more. And I'm sure every workplace has the same thing that, you've got to realize that this is a process that takes some time as we work through any issue in life. And I think that's hard for especially parents who want to, and grandparents for that matter as well, who want to fix something immediately. And so allowing that process to play out. So one last area I want to touch on before we wrap up today on schooling, because I think it's so important. We've spent all summer kind of preparing for this school year, we're preparing for this transition. And now our kids, like I said, mine got on the bus this morning. We're super excited, but I also am well aware that when they're at school, that there's other opinions being shared with them. That there are classmates and classmates' parents who tell their classmates this. And so our kids are going to come home, I imagine, every day, Kristen, with a whole head full of different ideas and thoughts. And so I wonder if you could maybe help me as a parent and some of the parents that are listening, or grandparents or guardians, talk about how do we let them process that and hear them out, but then kind of not guide, I don't want to use that word, but, help them filter the information that they're receiving on a daily basis. Does that make sense?
That makes sense. I mean, because there's so much information with so many different perspectives coming at all of us, including our children. Their brains are not fully developed. So it's very hard for them to comprehend sometimes and process all of the options because we still don't have that prefrontal cortex, which is kind of the CEO of the brain, fully developed. And we need to understand that. We need to understand what can and can't they process and handle emotionally. And I think that's really important. The first thing is sit down at the dinner table and have conversations and listen. If we spent more time caring about listening rather than being heard, I think we could get somewhere. So really listening and asking them how they feel about that information. Like, what do you feel about that? Well, I feel really scared. Well, tell me more about feeling scared. What are you scared of? Let's name it. Let's acknowledge what's underneath it. I'm telling you, when we can do that, then you'll see they're like, I'm okay now, and they'll go off and play. And for families with different opinions, different viewpoints, we can take that as threatening. Like we can feel threatened by that rather than go, okay, we feel differently. Let's acknowledge the differences. We have a hard time listening when we don't agree or when we're afraid. Okay, we have a hard time because we're going, ooh, that scares me. Like someone told my kid this, and now my kid might believe that. And now I'm scared as a parent. I have to recognize what emotion got evoked in me so that I can meet my child where they are. And that's really hard. So the first thing is you might have, as a parent, have a lot of feelings about what's being shared at school. Take a deep breath, first of all. Notice that that's triggering fear in you, or that's triggering disgust, or maybe some anger, or maybe even some sadness. And then ask your kid, how do you feel about that? Not how did that make you feel? Very different question. How do you feel about what was said? What fears do you have? This is a question I coach parents a lot on, because underneath a lot of behavior is fear. Fear of not having a belonging, fear of something bad happening, fear of death, fear of getting sick, fear of something bad happening to their family. There's a lot of fears, and when you can name them, we can actually move through it and get to the other side. It doesn't loop in their brains. They don't act out because they're afraid, and you're trying to make sense of like what's going on behaviorally. All behavior is a manifestation of an unmet need. So the need might be to process that fear. Asking them, what are you afraid of? Are there fears coming up? And they say, no, I'm not really afraid. Okay, are there other feelings coming up? Again, put this up around your house. I'm telling you, on bathroom mirrors. You can put it on your refrigerator. You can put it on your phones. You can put it in, where the kids are playing. I'm telling you, when you put this up and remind yourself of these core emotions, we can actually cue the brain to go, oh yeah, core emotion. What am I feeling? Oh, I can share that. My kids can share that. Cue the brain. I love brain cues because we somewhat are unconscious, right? This was not taught to us as children typically. And so it doesn't come naturally to go, oh, what am I feeling? We're more on outcome based. And right now there's a lot of uncertainty, and their transitions can be bumpy. And I want to acknowledge that. I know we're almost out of time. It's important to watch your expectations. We want our kids to have a great day at school. We want the grandkids to love it. We want our kids to enjoy it. And they may not. They're going to have rough days. They're going to have hard days. They're going to have moments of sadness. They're going to have moments of fear. And it's okay. It's normal. So we don't want to jump on the train of going, oh my gosh, they're sad and now they hate school. We want to go, okay, this is normal. This is normal. Transitions have multiple feelings and a lot of grief sometimes, combined with excitement and some relief. So know that this is going to be a journey, and the more the ability you are to self-soothe, the better you are to able to meet their needs.
Yeah. Well, that's awesome. Well, I will end this part by saying I am excited today because I loved seeing my kids excited about getting on the bus. But I also acknowledge that not everyone's kids felt that way, or how they may not feel. But that's where I stand personally today, Kristen. So I have loved this conversation. I've loved the conversation around communication styles. I'm excited to sit around and ask my kids tonight how they felt. And so I just appreciate, again, you having us, you being on today and walking us through this exercise. Before we go, though, if someone's watching today or watching later on the broadcast and they need help, they're struggling, they're dealing with issues on their own that they feel that they are alone, and where can they turn for some help?
The first thing I want to say is, please call and ask for help. So there's nothing more important than getting support you need. 1-800-273-TALK if you're having any kind of suicidal ideation, suicidal thoughts. 1-800-273-TALK. Here locally, we have Prevail if you're going through any domestic violence, emotional abuse. They do have a 24-hour hotline, 317-776. 3472. And we also have, if you're any place in the country, you're a local emergency room, please know you can call 911 at any time. You matter, you're important, you're enough. And I know the lies of shame want to tell you something different. And we are here to tell you, you are worth it and you matter. And we want you to be here.
Yeah. And again, you matter. And we're looking forward to being back with you here in a couple of weeks. Just a quick note, if you are a Noblesville resident, we are still We have a community-wide survey that the Mental Health Coalition is still working on. It's available at cityofnoblesville.org. So take a moment, let us know your thoughts. We want to get a good baseline here for where the community is at so we can continue this conversation in a meaningful way around mental health. So Kristen Boice, you're awesome. Everybody stay safe, and we'll be back here in 2 weeks to continue this conversation on another edition of Mental Health Monday. Thanks, Kristen.
Thank you, Mayor Jenson.